This is the Police Training HQ podcast. We are your headquarters for all things training and resources for Texas law enforcement. Welcome back to Police Training HQ podcast, episode 11, Lessons from the 10-Minute Trainer, and a safe place for nerds to talk about brain science and testing outcomes. My name is Walt, your forever DJ, and we're here with Mike. Mike, how are you, sir?
Forever DJ, like
That's
Wolfman
right.
Jack.
I was trying to
Wolfman
do
Jack with tape on his glasses. It's for nerds.
yeah. I tried to make it sound sexy, but boy, that was a fail.
No, I thought it was pretty good.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm trying it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, how's it going?
It's good.
Yeah, we didn't quite make it a week, but we of course have been out doing our thing, teaching a lot. Have you been in the classroom bunch?
Yeah, we've been teaching a lot, and new academy class as of Monday, bright and early Monday morning, starting all over again with a new group.
Yeah, it's always fun, especially looking at the stark contrast between our senior class and this new class. I recall some of the guys are coming in early and helping them out with their different stuff, and it was funny because even those that are brand new to law enforcement, they're almost scoffing at the questions like, "Hey, what is this workbook here? What do I do with this?" And they're like, "Come on, don't you know? I mean, geez Louise, it's definitely a fun model to be a part of."
Oh, you're talking about the older group
Yeah,
versus our new folks.
yeah,
Kind of cool.
it is cool. Yeah, it really is. And you know what else is cool? Retention. You know what else is cool? Methodology, and I have got both. We have got both this, and I don't know. I want to draw your attention to gosh, it could have been 2 years ago by now. I think you and I were going to do our first basic instructor class, and it was actually the first time that I went out to Sewell Ross, and I came home with a book that was given to me by my uncle Kyle Bauer. I think he was I would say the star, but I would like to think the host was, but I know that's a lie. That he was the star of episode 7 of our podcast, Aha to Duh. And he gave me this book by Sharon Bowman. It's called The 10-Minute Trainer. And I think you and I perused that day. Do you remember that book?
I think it was more like nerded out. Peruse sounds too such a nice way to put it, but yeah, I remember. It's like we talk about light bulbs. For me, there was some big light bulbs going off after we started prowling through that thing, and you started applying it like real quick and with great results. Even till even till today, we're still seeing the magic that some of the recommendations from that text has brought us.
Yeah, and then I think, I don't know if it's this book or others or if it's just a culmination, but I think you and I probably used this to start digging into how the brain accepts these, because in a lot of ways some of these are, I don't know if you want to call them novel or maybe it's not as common as others, but the before we get into the particulars, you and I have chatted several times on here about there's a couple of facts. One, there's just so much information, especially in the law enforcement academy, but even in a regular 8-hour day, that even if you are God's gift to lesson plan development, you're still going to be pressed for time, especially for teaching to that R word we keep throwing around, retention. And once again, no shots across the bows at any instructors. We're just trying to think of better. And Uncle Bud told me to be careful. Well, sorry, Kyle told me to be careful not to treat students like buckets, as if we're pouring information into that. and then allowing it to run over without regard to how it cements or concretes. And so I think that's where we start. Again, this book is a mixture of, I think, a little bit of brain science. The impetus behind that is attention brought to life by some kind of TV analogies that your attention span is fleeting, and I think that's where I like to start because it is the case that most students will be polite, they'll be um, mannerly, they'll be respectful, but they won't always be engaged. And I think that's the big one here is the overload of information for any law enforcement training.
Well, I mean, the current model in an academy of 736 hours crammed into training days, training weeks, and then leading into months with the hope that the learners will retain that information. If for nothing else, I guess testing purposes, that's a lofty goal. I don't I don't even know how to describe that except that in that overload of information, and I love your bucket analogy. I think it's what folks get their head around when we start thinking about how much information are we asking students to hang on to
Right.
with all the distractions that go along with that.
Hmm.
I don't think that we keep in mind enough that there are ways to learn and there are ways as trainers I think that we can influence that, but that's just the reality. So much information. What are some of the ways to help them hang on to it?
Hmm.
And I think with this book, because we're certainly going to get into some sharing some of the nuggets from the book. I think for the listener who's like, I don't want to get into this brain science stuff again. Just take the recommendations from the book and apply them, and I think you're going to see results. It's like I don't care what the magic is going on behind the curtain. I'm going to do one of these little recommendations from the book. I would almost guarantee you're going to see results from that.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And I, I think I've asked you this before, but not notwithstanding, I think probably what is traditional, notwithstanding what is comfortable, because we've already talked. We already talked. We've already spoke about that. Sorry, East Texan. Um, the the thing that I wonder though is, do you think that an instructor that's like, okay, I am searching for a way to maybe teach to retention, but even some of the words that we're going to talk about later, teach backs, walking palaces, memory aids. It sounds silly, almost pedagogically silly, because we're andragogy, we're adults, but there are the same pedagogical problems in class, like attention span, which is almost akin to a child. Like I remember myself in church or in another where I know I have to sit there, but the last 10 minutes I'm thinking, good lord, how many ceiling tiles are there? When's the last time I saw Danny DeVito in a movie? So on and so forth. And I think that's pedagogical enough. So do you think that it offends the instructor's methodology, or does it offend the instructor's mind to say, well, these seem silly, like little silly little games?
Well, if you're instructing with the traditional model of we're going to talk for 50 minutes or I'm going to talk at the class for 50 minutes and I'm going to give them a 10-minute break, how do they feel when they reverse that role? They're sitting in a class and somebody is lecturing at them for 50 minutes. Do they start to lose interest, get distracted, start fiddling with their phones, doodling on a piece of paper? It's sometimes just put yourself in the shoes of the students, and if you can't have that realization, probably missing the boat as an instructor to begin with. It's like just because you were taught a specific way it's maybe not the best way. And if you're not open-minded enough to maybe think of it that way, then you're probably not willing to try some of these things out. But we say the 10-minute trainer, and you think about attention span. And I know we had talked a little bit, and I hear this sort of the modern attention span in adult learners. I think we've always been this way. It's like you get bored with something and your brain starts to drift. It's like I've heard, um, you know, all the penal code definitions my brain's willing to stand for the last 45 minutes. I need to focus on something else. But as trainers, we just kind of default back to the old school approach to things. Well, it's up to the students. I'm going to cover the information. You got a bigger responsibility than that.
Yeah,
I
and I mean, well, the reality, like you said, of the modern attention span. One of the things that I didn't get into with Uncle Bud on that episode was he had mentioned something, and I wonder if you've heard the same. Like my father was a Vietnam era age man, and him and myself and others, even across that long. Have you ever heard a teacher or somebody from that maybe that era of time? It's like, man, he was a crap student, but he was really brilliant, or he was crap in school, the grades never reflected, but man, he or she is so brilliant, or whatever. I think that has a lot to do with the shared reciprocity and the shared responsibilities of a teacher, which is okay. I don't go to a play or a basketball game. I don't pay my admission and not expect to be entertained to some degree. But you know what you're signing up for too. So um, you still, our students, our CE students, and people that are consumers are paying to be there. But I wonder to what degree those that are even sitting in there, it's like, man, they're brilliant, but with the price of admission, are they getting the performance that they're expecting? And then if that is the case, then are we really performing at a high level? Because I think you and I are kind of Harlem Globetrotting right now. I think we're the best of the best. And I wonder why people stay so intentionally focused in that.
Well, when we were pre-gaming before we turned on the record button, we were talking about novelty, and just when you were talking, then I was thinking novelty. I think is what's the hook for the brain, and we're I don't say force feeding topics, but sorta. It's like you have to take 42 topics in the police academy, and even though the student knows I need to stay focused if I want to pass this test, I need to stay focused if I'm going to do well on the licensing exam, that part of the brain may be struggling with the other part of the brain going, but this is just not as interesting to me. And it's hard for me to stay focused because I think about, I'm a YouTube nerd. I'll sit here and I could entertain myself watching YouTube videos, but I think about the scrolling through there is I might go through 41 videos and it's like, oh yeah, I want to look at this one at the 42th video, 42nd, 42th. There you go. There's that high dollar education at its finest, right? The 42nd video, my brain goes, ooh, I want to learn a little bit more about this. And so I think if we can sort of insert ourselves into that as instructors to grab their attention, be as effective as we can during that little window of time, because we know we're going to lose it a little bit. Not it's not purposeful. I don't know that the vast majority of students are just trying to be rude. You start to see sort of shifting in the chairs, the droopy eyes, and they're in some places they'll go stand in the back of the classroom because that's what they've been told to do, so they don't fall asleep at the desk. But I think if you do different things, the classroom is sort of this moving process in little tiny chunks. You're going to move past that. It's like we're not even giving you time to not be interested in it because we're
Right.
moving on to something else or a different technique. It may be the same information, we're just looking at it or offering it in a little different way.
Yeah, and actually, I built an episode the other week for your approval about the effect of training scars, and about the effect of the brain that you and I both know, boredom, threats, those kind of things. I find it interesting that the brain responds to boredom in the same way that that really lowly evolved part of our brain that's like, hey, I'm hungry, hey, I need to run, hey, I'm bored. They see it as a threat in the same way, and so you get up and I mean, it's pretty obvious, right? It's for somebody that's I've mentioned this before, neurodivergent. I understand patterns really well, and I'll be teaching, and all of a sudden, five people get up to use the bathroom at the same time. I don't think our bladders link like that amongst adults. I think it's I just can't stand another second. Now that's my fault to some degree. The truth also is attention is fleeting. I mean, you and I both know that. Instructors should know that too. So that way, I think we don't want to feel like I don't want people to take it personal. That I'm getting tired or whatever. I mean, there's a whole other slew of reasons why a student could be, but I mean, given that all things are equal, I had enough sleep that night as a student and I'm just bored. There's got to be something there. And I'd like to, if you don't mind, just because now my brain is spinning, I thought, while you were talking, because you inserted your good ideas into my brain and I'm washing them, is like, not washing them, but it's washing around my brain, is the one time hook at the beginning. You know how in our BIT classes, we kind of have our students do a hook at the beginning, right? And so we get this big video. It's like Rambo coming out of the woods, and everybody's awake and laughing. And then all of a sudden, it's like, we're going to talk about serrated knives. And you're like, oh, crap. I mean, I was hooked, but only for a second. And so I wonder for you, the one time hook is actually a thing that I wrote down a long time ago in a BIT class or basic instructor class. But the hook should be throughout. That's what you and I do actually, that I think is different, is we continuously hook them through different ways. Now, I don't want to abandon our conversation about intentional focus, like Dr. Huberman's take. I think you talked about prefrontal cortex, and you do it a lot better than I do, but without abandoning that too much, I mean, surely just a story or a shocking fact isn't sufficient to combat this focus problem.
No, and when we're there's our nerd coming out because we're drifting a little bit, but when you say that, so and it's going to be in your Facebook feed after this because all that stuff listens to you. But have you seen the storytelling? I don't know if it's an app or it's like cards,
Oh, yeah.
but there's a lot of things about that. I see that on YouTube sometimes. It's like, but storytelling. Think about really good books. They're going to tell you a little bit, and then you're going to be like, man, I need to go to sleep, but I'm going to read the next chapter. And then you get through that chapter. It's like, okay, I can't put the book down
Yeah.
now. But it's like, but if we throw it all at you at the beginning, that big attempt at the wonderful hook is like, I'm going to keep this class so engaged because I sold it to them at the beginning. It's like you got to, I think, sprinkle that along the way. It's like I'm gonna tease you a little bit with this story, but I think one of the reasons that you don't see that a lot because you got to put your brain into it.
Yeah.
As an instructor, you got to think about, how would I tell this story? How would I slowly offer this story over the course of
Hmm.
the hour, the day, the week long class? That's a challenge, but I think it is that challenge that at least drives me, and I think absolutely drives you as well. Is like, I don't want easy. That's not rewarding. I want to have to think about what I'm going to do to make the class the best that I possibly can. And the next time I teach it, I want it to be better. And the time
Mhm.
after that, and the time after that. And um, I I think that as a professional, you have to have that level of drive to do it better and better and better at each time. So yeah, we certainly drifted, but man,
Yeah.
you sparked. Now you got stuff washing around in my head.
Well, I have to add too because I thought, and I promise you, I'll get back to the prefrontal cortex thing because I think it is on the money. But you said something where it's like, why I can't put this book down, and I thought, well, why do we do that? And actually, it's investment. You're invested. It's the you and I watched a 90-minute episode of 1883. I hadn't even seen an episode of it, but we were dog tired after working an 18, 16-hour day, but we still were invested. And I wonder if we can't just sit here and coin the phrase cognitive investments real quick. That's what our teachbacks are. That's what our models are running is we're making cognitive investments. So are the students. And so, yeah, we maybe there's that maybe a little bit of an explanation of that phenomena where as an instructor and a student, you look down at your watch and think, oh crap, it's been 2 hours and we got to take a break. We got to get you up and get some blood to that corpus callosum, or your feet might fall asleep. But that's the same to me. It's the same mechanics as a good book or a good TV show. Is heck, I'll risk my feet falling off before I miss another minute of this great TV show or whatever.
Yeah, it's that if not everybody's jumping up at the 50-minute mark because they have to go to the bathroom, that's
Right?
probably a sign that they're wanting to hear more of your story. So,
Or they're
so you said
cognitively invested.
cognitively invested.
Yeah.
That's good. You
Yeah.
do come up with these cool little um, Walt. We'll call them Walt. That's a Waltism.
Yeah.
Is
Well, if we weren't recording, it would be probably improper or inappropriate. So, I'll thank you. The check's in the mail. Well, okay, so now I've got a whole nother thing. I need to take my proverbial Vyvanse and get back on track here. But I want to talk because personal attention and attention span is something important to me. It's been a huge well, just de facto, it's been a problem with me and my current state of my brain. And for years, coaches, teachers, colleagues, supervisors always make the comment, it's hard for me to pay attention and things of that nature. And so I really try, especially when I'm teaching, to be cognizant that more and more we're learning about adult attention span and this intentional focus. Now, when you and I discussed Dr. Huberman's podcast on the best ways to study and learn, and it's a big episode. I think it's an hour long or 2 hours long. He did talk about intentional focus, and that. Do you recall? It that is not our default, or was the point that being intentionally focused drains us, or it drains the brain's resources?
I don't remember the specifics of Huberman's explanation. Obviously, he's the big brain neuroscientist type of person, but I think that if you just reflect on how our brain works, even our little nerd brains, I think we're constantly scanning for data. It's like, what's in my field of view? What am I hearing? And it's what catches your attention that is what the brain is focusing on most at the time and what it's probably processing most at the time. Because right now we're both sitting talking into microphones and there's stuff going on around us, but um, it's not registering because we're focused on the, I guess, the task at hand. But I wanted to back up because it's like I think we have those little I don't know what you would call it. You said neurodivergent. I don't know that that fits, but so you said pay attention. I think that if we frame that as if we have students that give attention, because if you're paying me attention because I'm the instructor, it's kind of like you owe me that.
Mm,
And but if you're giving me your attention, I feel like that you have a different level of interest in it. And that's probably the academy. You're paying attention because you need to learn the penal code definitions.
mm,
But when I start adding a story to that, or I'm giving you the relevance through a story, now you're starting to give me attention. You don't owe it to me, but
mm.
you want to listen to what I have to say. And it's I think less forced. And
Oh, yeah.
maybe that's sort of part of the puzzle to all this is the student is giving you their attention,
Mm,
and we honor that by not overloading their brain by um, just lecture, and we move to something that's a little bit more um, brain friendly, so to speak.
yeah. Wow. Yeah. Well, you say pay attention. I think about investments, paid investments, and ROI, and we got a whole nother cool thing I'm going to track here because that's exactly right. I mean, it sounds like what you're saying is when the students give me their attention, it's much more genuine. It's less about manners and being polite or respectful, but it's the same type of investment you would, or I'm sorry, the same type of attention you would give the thing that you truly care about, or the thing that you're less distracted about, or whatever. I mean, it's a good podcast that you'll listen to for 2 hours, or it's a good fishing show, or whatever. It's because it has your attention. And I certainly don't claim to know every mechanic of that, um, but it there is that experience that instructors will have when they feel like, man, my instruction is on this height, and I feel almost like a high where everybody's engaged and we're talking and doing all that. But it always comes to the end where it's like, well, damn, it kind of, we took off well using a pilot's analogy. Maybe you'll correct me, but man, the takeoff was great. The ride was smooth, but maybe the landing's kind of rough. And so it may ruin the ride, I don't know. But you do see that phenomenon a little bit.
Well, the takeoff is optional, but the landing is mandatory. So
Yeah, that's true. Well, since it's a fight against gravity, that makes sense.
this is true.
Yeah,
S- So should we drift toward the info promised?
there
I'm
we are.
loving this conversation, but I feel
Yeah,
like um, we're gonna. I don't want to
yes,
leave our listeners hanging with some of those
fair enough.
cool
Fair
little
enough.
tips. And for
Well,
those of you who can't, obviously you can't see us, but I'm watching Walt over the camera here,
yeah,
and he's steadily scribbling down notes because
yes,
I know how his brain works. It's like bing, 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 got new idea, got to work on this, got to integrate that. So,
yeah,
but hey, I think I, I think you're not paying attention, you're giving attention in that
yeah.
analogy, probably. So,
Yeah. Well, I'm writing that down actively. You're right. I let's get back on track. So, um, one, we know that the role of the prefrontal cortex, which is mentioned in the book, it was also mentioned by Dr. Huberman, is a dopamine reliant part of your brain. It sits right behind your forehead, but it does some other things that you spoke about in the episode where we spoke about steps. It's a goal direction, or it directs behavior in a goal oriented manner. It's responsible for focus and attention, working memory, which are one of our episodes talks about instructor responsibility, decision making, emotional regulation, and then prioritizing information as well. And that, as the quote unquote conductor, still to the point I was trying to make a million years ago was that Dr. Huberman's points are so on point there because it almost seems like if they're giving you attention, that's still fleeting. And that's literally this whole whatever minutes we've been spending on this is the point. is you can just about do all the fun up front. You can have a nice hook or whatever, but eventually it will leave, just like a motivation or whatever. That's a fleeting. It's just fleeting. It is what it is, and it's okay. But we're going to learn how to. I hope today we're going to give some things to, or some teaching tips, let's say, to make class go by smoother. And one of them, just a quick harken back, if you would, is when the student becomes the instructor, and we call that teachbacks. One of the things that I loved about Bowman's book and the way that we're going to analogize it today is, so teachbacks, it doesn't prioritize information. It effectively hits the brain's save button, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, an investment to be able to teach back the bit of information is different than just being a consumer of what's being said in the classroom. Your brain has to go into a different mode of operation. It's like I've got to take this information, sort of use my head in a different way, because now I'm going to have to offer output. It's all input, 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 but the teach back is going to turn that around, um, and the student is going to have to take a different approach with it as far as how they apply it. I
Yeah,
don't know if
and
that's the best explanation, but I kind of think of it in that sort of way.
yeah. Well, I mean, it is, and well, no, it is. It's a great explanation, and it's a way to, when you say the save button, I mean, to kind of just take one step back for a second. When we talk about working memory and short term, we've already had an episode on that where instructors at your best day is going to get your students to this working and short term memory space, but we know that that's not long term memory, which takes days and repetition and things of that nature. I should have said this earlier too, so you can smack me on the hand. These are from the book what you and I both use commonly because you and I feel like it fits the best with the style of curriculum and that is particular to law enforcement, which tends to be heavily kinesthetic or has practical application. We, to your points, many times is I think everything does, but particularly in our space where rote practice is probably not the best. And so this teachbacks is actually from the book, and it gives the student again a little bit of control in this retrieval way, because again, just to kind of maybe walk backwards again to the preface is this book is a way to break up the monotony of the hour long kind of block that we're all used to, 50 minutes and a break, in a way to do some reinforcement, some retention gathering, some investments into their own cognitive experience while breaking up the material into chunks, which was another part of Bowman's book. If you and I both have, I don't know if we've spoke on here about chunking before, but that's where it comes from, is chunking up material.
Well, and I think that might deserve a little bit of an example. We did chunking Monday. It's like we started the new recruits with the learning the phonetic alphabet. And so if you take the alphabet and say learn all 26 of these letters with the appropriate phonetic, then that's a pretty lofty task. But I think we did what, five A, B, C, D, E on the board, and
Yeah,
so that's chunking. And so we're not overloading the brain. We're giving them time to absorb it, come back the next day, go back through it, rehash it, add a little bit more on, but we're constantly going back
yeah.
until the point where you don't have to go back. They
Well,
know A through Z without having to have it chunked up. But the other thing with this teach back, and I think we've talked about this before too, but it's pretty good as a diagnostic tool. I
yeah. In
mean,
what
you can,
ways?
well, I think you start to see the understanding sort of coming out of them. Because we talk about learning objectives and things that people write. The student will know. The student will, you know, how do you measure know? Well, you I think you can see no because it's coming back out of, their mouth, and you're like, "Yep, they're right on the mark with the information," and so
Yeah.
they're grasping it, so you're probably involved in conveying it in a way that they can get their head around. But now we get that sort of, wow, they are actually getting it. The light bulbs are going off because they can turn around and teach it back, and not just to us. I mean, because I think teach backs. I don't remember what they're called. I think it's a walk and talk or something like that, where they're just literally, hey, we're going to go on a break, teach back this concept to your neighbor, and then, take an extra 5 minutes on your break, something like
Right.
that. And they don't have to be these lofty things where they get up in front of the classroom and use the marker board. Oh, that's cool too. I mean,
Yeah.
I can't say that we don't have a lot of students who impress the heck out of us with just being able to get up there and almost fire it back to you. And sometimes maybe even better than we gave it to them in our first pass. And that's,
Sometimes.
man, that's really, really exciting to see.
Oh yeah. Well, in the book, it's referred to as each one teach one, and that is the same concept, and it can be long form or short form. We use it more in the long form uh, at the academy because, like, I mean, I guess for tracking in the episode, this is, I think, our number one favorite. When it comes to it. But my comment earlier about whether this is novel or not is, and I should have said, is we know, you and I both know that novelty plays a big part of intentional focus, which again I missed on the last segment, but not to go back there at all. But these are novel ways to heighten their attention, get them involved in material that really you have options. You can just tell it to them, but it's not teaching. And this is applicable to anyone. It can be a field training officer who's trying to I mean, because diagnose is such a great way to say it. Because I don't know if I spend the 50 minutes talking off a slide, I don't know if my students are getting it. I probably don't care if that's my only methodology. Not, again, not to throw shots across the board, but there might be a percentage that just don't care. But this is applicable to anybody.
Yeah, if your slideshow is just to tick off some boxes,
Yeah.
I think there's pretty good evidence there that,
Oh, yeah.
uh, yeah, maybe that you don't care. It's like, I'm going to go through this material. They get it. They don't get it. I don't care. I, I just, I don't stomach that very well. But
Well, no, you shouldn't, especially as a director. I mean, where your responsibility is to student experience and instructor experience too. But I mean, the freedom you give your instructor cadre to kind of do it the way that they want to. It comes with responsibility.
if you manage to pull the wool over my eyes that you weren't going to be the death by PowerPoint person,
Hmm.
you would teach the one time if that was your approach. Is like, I don't care. If you
Right.
don't care, then I don't care to employ you. I think that's kind of the bottom line. I if we're not putting the best of the best in front of recruits, we're certainly doing them a disservice.
Oh yeah. Well, in putting the best of the best, unfortunately, I think it's a lot like probably athletes or any other field where there's some technicality. Is well, there definitely could be to some degree. Sorry, my cat's in here yelling. Hold on one second. There could be some definite misguided or even some missed opportunities there because we maybe have a really great instructor in the making, but because they've never been told or maybe dogmas kind of lead their life, that they'll never get the chance to take the stage or take the field, and that's kind of sucks because then you get someone else who might just be really popular or clever or charming or whatever, and that's certainly not the key phrases there either. Um, in the same way that teach backs are effective, there's one in particular that, if you don't mind, I'm going to ask you to tackle, because you've done it twice. You've also done it, well, you've done it more than twice. But there was one particular section talking about memory palaces. I believe they call it walking the content. You do this not only as a way to remember arrest, search, and seizure principles or concepts, but also as for the amendments. Is that right?
Yeah, well, I guess maybe to set the stage with that, I think they're really useful for helping the student sort of latch onto some information, even though they may not quite yet understand how to apply it. And I don't know if maybe it's a shortcut. I don't know if that's the best way to describe it. It's like it will get your retention of material there faster. I think that maybe is a better description. So, for instance, um, with the memorizing the constitutional amendments, because we know in U.S. Texas Constitution, that block of instruction, the current licensing exam, there's 12 questions out of that block, and it's likely to be the constitutional amendments
Yep.
and police courts corrections and how those interact. Well, so if a student can be solid in the constitutional amendments and understand police courts and corrections, that's 12 correct questions on the licensing exam.
Yeah.
But you would think that a lot of people would come in and it's like you could fire amendments at them, and that because we're citizens of this country, that we would know those intimately, but most people don't. And so we sort of create this map using the human body numbering from the top of your head to your left foot is 1 through 10. And we assign little visuals at certain spots. So, for instance, the top of your head would be 1, your mouth would be number 2, and your chest would be number 3. And so, not to go completely through that, but for instance, for the Second Amendment, I have a visual of a teddy bear with a rifle and a stick figure family with a bunch of rifles. So we have the bear with the rifle, and we have the militia. So instead of it being just words, we're adding visual context to that. The Third Amendment is like, just imagine a quarter in the middle of your chest. Well, it's the quartering soldiers part of the Third Amendment. So the connection of the visual memory, and so and maybe that deserves the memory palace explanation,
Please.
is with a memory palace, we're taking a known location and more or less walking through it, and we're planting information, or in mostly the form of a visual, throughout that location. So, for instance, you could have someone imagine that they're pulling up in front of their house, and we plant something visual there. So you pull up in your driveway and you see whatever on the garage door, right? So as they start to link those things together, they can move through their visual, and it's going to sort of conjure back up the information that connects to it. And that's a very clunky, cumbersome explanation. I think we could probably do you know, a little episode on actually how to employ that. But can I offer one more example? I don't want to
Well,
drag
no,
this on too
this
long, but
I wanted to add this because your palaces are so effective.
well, so how I really got interested in this, some an odd reading, but there's a book called, I think it's Moonwalking with Einstein, and I'm sure I'm a little off on the intro, but more or less, This guy was a reporter, and it must have been a slow news day because he started looking at these memory championships where people would memorize long strings of numbers and they could remember everyone's name and all that sort of stuff. And so he starts looking into this, and I guess he's going into it thinking, well, these people must be like these big brain savant type people. And every one of them he talked to is like, no, we've just learned the technique. So he spent a year, and he entered one of the contests and he won it. And so, but one of his visuals was Einstein moonwalking like Michael Jackson because it was very sticky to his brain. So back to sort of another example, when we're teaching search and seizure, we talk about warrantless arrest for situations where the officer wasn't there, didn't see the offense. We have students go through 1403A1 through 6, and if those familiar with that will know that that is our allowance to make warrantless arrests for offenses that did not occur in our presence or view. So we take all 6 of those and we create visual imagery, and mm, in within, I'm going to say, less than 10 minutes, they can walk back through the visuals. They can walk back through them the next day. They can walk back through them a week later, and we'll be in the middle of a scenario. It's like, okay, so here's the scenario. We're going to debrief it. What gave you the authority to make the arrest? Well, that was family violence, so that's 1403A4. But not because they've memorized the statute. They've connected the visual, and we'll often just have them visualize one of their coordinators assaulting their spouse. And it's like, well, that's family violence. So when they walk back through that, they go 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, wait, that's family violence. And maybe that's dog and pony a little bit. The recruits can just fire that back at you. But when you ask them about their authority to make an arrest, they know it. And I think that it's a great tool, but it's also going to require an investment on the instructor to create those palaces, or at least show the students how to do that on their own.
Well, it's a fact. I mean, the students know it. Now, that's not saying that they don't get a you know a pass on going home and studying it or repeating that back to each other. They have to, or else, just like anything else, you're gonna start to forget some of it. It's going to deteriorate over time. But it's a fact. I mean, it's um, I mean, when I met you, for the for the listeners' benefit, I don't know if you'll remember this or not, but you actually, the first class you allowed me to teach was arrest, search, and seizure. I didn't know that was your thing. I didn't know that was your expertise. And so you came up and you asked me, "Do you know 1403A1 through 6?" And I was like, "Yeah." And then you started spouting it off, and I was like, "Okay, well, I don't know it like that." I mean, for goodness sakes. And you came in and did that. And even someone that studies it for over a decade, it makes it so concrete that literally when I walk into the college, I see a suspicious person behind the trash can in my little brain, because that's how effective it can be, notwithstanding, again, the need to keep going, and keep reciting it and keep studying it.
Well, do you think that, I don't know if it's the novelty thing, but it's certainly, the brain sees it a little bit differently. So, for instance, we use a little bit of a, I don't say it's a chant, but I'm going to call it that because
Yeah.
it's my idea, so I'm gonna call it that. But so in 1403A1, we do, the persons found in suspicious places and circumstances, and in that, it's a felony, a breach of the peace, a violation of Chapter 42, which is disorderly conduct, and 4902, which is public intoxication. So, well, I just say it's F-BOP 42 drunk, and then I make them chant that, and say it along with me, and we just start acting
Right.
goofy about it. But I think about how many little chants from commercials over the years that I, the old school McDonald's, the 2 all beef patty thing,
Oh gosh.
it's like riding a bike. If I wanted to purge it out of my brain, it would be impossible. So we're it's almost like we're implanting stuff in people's brains, and I know there's a lot of science behind that, and this
Yeah,
is certainly not the time or place to try to even dig into that because I don't know how that one works, but I know that it does work,
it does.
and I don't know why we don't take advantage of that more and teach the students how to do it themselves.
Well, it is silly. It's not silly in the way that it's ineffectively silly, but it is if you're not used to it, or if you felt like, well, gosh, that's how they're going to teach children. Going back to our original point, or at least the one I was trying to make earlier, which is pediological problems are not just for kids. That refers to problems in classrooms and remembering things. It's a problem, and it's because of our little 8 pounds of gray matter doesn't always want to hold on to stuff, especially if we're not trained to be able to keep it, or if it doesn't see it as necessary. Because I'm thinking about a test at the end of this thing. I don't know what's on the test, so it's not like my brains can connect those two things together, test and information. So now I feel stressed about the fact that I've got to remember all this when if we do it right, which is why it works in one way, is because I'm not thinking about the test. I'm not thinking about anything else other than this walking palace. I'm thinking about why there's a quarter on my chest. What the heck is one of our instructors assaulting their wife for, so on and so forth. And that keeps it so fresh in the memory. I mean, they're having a great time.
No, I agree. And one other, because again,
Please.
I can certainly nerd out over this one with other techniques, and I think there are people who are really really good at multiple techniques. But one thing that stood out to me the first time I went to one of the Gracie instructor classes, there was probably 50 plus people there to take this class. It was at Arlington PD, and the instructors that were there, they were walking around and they started interacting, and they would introduce themselves, and then they would ask your first name, and then they would drift off. And I remember that every time they would come back to work directly with you, they had your name locked in.
Wow.
And so there has to be that intentional focus. And I would really like to sort of explore that. It's like, can you teach people how to have that intentional focus? Because it wasn't just one instructor. Every instructor that was at that class was able to do that probably within the first hour. So they're walking around meeting 50 different people, and their brain is able to sort of lock, and it was locked in for the days that we were there. I mean, they it wasn't like they went home and come back the next day and had to ask you your name again. It was like, hey, Mike, listen, do this, and you'll probably find this technique works a little better. But
Wow.
how good does that feel as a student too, when the instructor is paying you the attention
Right.
by
Giving.
knowing your name?
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I wonder with your comment. I mean, without trying to go off the rails again, is when you said, "How do you teach others to be intentionally focused?" Of course, my brain went to the lowest hanging fruit, which is, um, isn't that part of the beginning where we kind of say, almost in a rote way, it's like I expect everybody to pay attention here. You're like, okay, well, that's clearly not teaching intentional focus.
No, and I think it's framing it like we were talking about earlier. It's like, well, I'm the instructor, so you owe me your attention,
Ah,
instead of, um, let me earn your attention. Let me
yeah.
tell you this story. Let me remember your name. Let me give you some ideas as to how to hang on to this information. I think it's not given; it's earned.
Oh, yeah.
And maybe that's part of, we've talked about this before. If you walk in and you're the master of the universe and you want to make sure everybody understands that, you're instantly off-putting. Do that in an in-service class
Oh
with a
boy.
bunch of seasoned officers, and that would be hard to recover from. So, earn their attention. You could be the best instructor in the given topic area, but you can be extremely off-putting, and then nobody wants to listen to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we had that talk about subject matter expertise and the potential fallacy behind it. Yeah, I may know everything about this topic, but again, maybe I'm not a good performer or whatever that is, and that goes to a little bit of what you and I think are going to do in this next advanced class, which is they're going to have to answer this question of what'd you do that's advanced. It's
Oh, advanced instructor.
right. I'm sorry, I didn't clarify, but I mean, to be honest with you, this seems advanced to me. Maybe I'm just used to the traditional model of law enforcement education, but this seems like an advanced technique by just saying, all right, I'm going to take the material home, I'm going to digest it, come up with memory palaces, come up with teach back scenarios, walking palaces, and walking the content. That's an advanced to me, that's an advancement. Because inevitably, we've talked about it before, we see kind of that back to the comfort thing, not to go back to our previous episode, or the ninth episode, but I think that that's one of the things when you talk about intentional focus is maybe we should, as train the trainers, maybe we should teach our teachers about teaching intentional focus. I know, sorry, I just went down that rabbit hole, but um, that's something that should be spoken about. And okay, so you're up, you're doing your walking palaces, you're doing all those things. We have to get back into class. Eventually, we're going to have to reorganize and get back in. What then? Because I don't want to sit back down. I want to stay engaged. So like, what then? That's where my brain goes. Maybe I'm doing the thing again where I'm bringing us off topic a little bit.
What then for the student?
Yeah,
Is that what you mean?
yeah,
I think if we have them that engaged, they're ready for maybe new information.
yeah,
It's like we're priming that
mm,
with showing them something different in the classroom.
yeah,
It's like from the teach backs to the memory palaces, and I think we're about to jump into maybe like the ticket out
yeah.
approach.
That's my favorite.
Yeah, I like it too. I think, and it can be used in so many different ways. But I mean, I'll let you tackle that one. You, like I said, you
Yeah,
use it way more than I do, but I certainly think it's a great little tool or technique.
yeah. I like it. I actually I don't think this is as complicated or not complicated, but it's nuanced as the walking palaces because it doesn't draw on anything. It's simply a final question before a student leaves. But it's intentional
For break,
for break, yes,
right?
or even for the day.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
mean,
I
it can
guess it would
be,
apply there.
yeah, it could, and it can be you have to answer it before, or what I do a lot of the times in academy training is come back tomorrow with the answer. Um, I think probably in Bowman's book, it was something to answer before you go on break, but I think it can be utilized in a multiplicity of ways. But you can ask a question from that little short block to help that short-term memory go to long-term memory. It also, whatever that last 5, 10, 7 minutes would be, is it's kind of like I'm thumping you on the shoulder a little bit and saying, "Hey, don't turn it off. Don't turn your brain off. You got one more thing. You're so used to going to break, and then you kind of get that cognitive rest. Don't turn it off right now. Just stay with me." And that's what the ticket out is. It's super easy. It's hey, look, I'm going to ask you one more time before we go to break. What is the difference between detention and arrest? As a diagnostic tool, they may look at you and say, Mike, I don't know, but at least we have an answer and we can diagnose. Or we don't go to break until you tell me those things, and maybe that's another round of research or another round of reflection in some degree. And so this one really helps in that way. And again, applicable across all educational platforms like FTOs or briefing trainings or whatever. It also, just for an aside, it's fluency. So instead of just rote memory, it's for fluency. If like the students from N15, one of our classes, who was the first one to go through our new model, they struggled like heck to get the elements of theft down for whatever reason. And so every day before break or before we went and did anything, they had to recite or tell me that as a ticket out. Um, Eventually, everybody got it down because of spaced repetition is repetition in practice. But I noticed that it wasn't just the recite. They didn't recite it; they were fluent. They could tell you the nuances behind it because it took them that. So yeah, this is a great methodology. It's a way for the instructor to corral the attention, to maybe even in some way take control or get back in the lead a little bit to where we can get back on the rails. And then something they can do before they turn that attention span off to say, hey, let me inject this idea and you give me the answer back.
Well, and can't you sort of mesh some of the others, like, hey, here's your ticket out, spend the next 2 minutes teaching something back to your partner. You had cats earlier, now my dogs are barking, so
Yeah,
we got a world of animal noises on our
right.
podcast this time.
Right. Well, that's bonus content.
That's true.
It's
But
bonus.
so the teach back, and there's so many in the book.
Yeah.
I would say buy the book because you won't go wrong with it.
Oh no.
And I think we even did a little summary page of
Yeah.
I'll have to try to find that link that, hey, here's some ideas of how you might use this in policing. I'll see if I can't dig that up and maybe put it in the description for
Yeah.
people to download. I think it's out on our website, but
I think so
the the gallery walk, I think that's
too.
cool.
Hmm.
I like to use the marker pages, the peel and stick post-it type things, the big ones. And so it's like walking around in an art gallery where
Hmm.
they're you know you're gonna look at these different things, and again, it's hitting the brain with a little bit different approach.
Right. Well, and,
Uh,
and to your point, one of the ways if you're teaching transportation code is having the what was it, the fire hydrant in the shape of a 15 for 15 feet the parking distance. That was one of
right.
your ideas that was amazing, because yeah, you see that over and over again, and then you go outside and you look at a hydrant. It's almost like the Matrix. It turns into a 15. It's strange.
Well, I've done this before. A lot of it simply because it's entertaining, but
Right.
we'll play Pictionary with the terms and definitions out of the transportation code.
Uh,
And so it's like authorized emergency vehicle. Well, they're going to go up there and draw a police car, right? But then when you're like, you give them something like a crosswalk versus a sidewalk.
yeah.
But it's funny watching them struggle to draw it, but then the students get into it but it's reinforcing in a different way. I'm
Yeah.
not clicking a slide and going, okay, student so and so, read that definition to me.
Right.
Okay, then I'm going to the next slide, and the next student's going to read it to me. It's like it's just a different way.
Yeah.
So would I'm going to put you on the spot
Sure.
for a minute. So if we were to say we're gonna do the 50-10 because all cops have the tiny bladder syndrome. I think that it kicks in about every 50 minutes where we got to go to the bathroom. But let's say within a 50-minute window, how might you use that 50 minutes where we're keeping attention with not only sharing the information and creating some relevance maybe to the information based on our experience, but how would you use that 50 minutes to cover a topic and maybe even something you've done recently? Because I think one of the things that maybe our listeners would would like and certainly would like to have some feedback is like, we talk about these concepts, we talk about the brain science behind it, but it's like,
Mhm.
what's the actionable stuff? What can I take away from this podcast and turn around and start using in the classroom? So That's my big build up to turning it back to Walt Bauer for how do I put this in play in the classroom.
All right. Well, so I wrote this down weeks ago, actually, because I was playing with the different variations and combinations of this. And so, how about we just make this a call to action real quick? Just give it a shot. Whenever you're teaching the next time for our listeners, give this a shot. So when you get in, some attention grabbing, some grabbing. Look at that. There's a G grabbing. Um, some
High
relevance.
dollar education there.
That's right. Yeah, I played football in East Texas. I was fine. But yeah, some autonomy, relevance, practical application. Get engagement, challenge a story, something. Right about 10 minutes in, re-engage with something open-ended or a teach back because we give our information out, the course materials out before class, and to show a little bit of autonomy, give the students the reins within the first 10 or 15 minutes, or even a group share. Uh,
And you're talking about our worksheets, correct?
that's right. Or
Okay.
when we give out our basic instructor material for them to study before coming to class. That there are so many combinations of these that I'm being particular, but play with them all and use them for what would work for your class. So 0 to 10 minutes. That's what we're already doing. With about the 20-minute mark, about a little micro scenario or role play event, a tabletop discussion or a scenario where they have to solve a problem, right? So that takes another 10 or 15 minutes. And then let's say minute 30, um, how about some kind of outcome from that? Let's discuss the outcomes from our role play or whatever. Or maybe even if we're doing arrest, search, and seizure, how about a case law twist where it's unexpected, right? Then the 40-minute, let's talk about peer to peer, another teach back or discussion, decision critiques, and then 50 minutes, a reflection, a ticket out. Maybe your ticket out today is, to your point earlier, I want you to think about a memory palace to create based on our last 50 minutes. So when we come back to class, we just start over at minute 0 with something attention grabbing, relevant, or a challenge, and then just spend the model in that way. And I can guarantee you that the class will, your first time, may be clunky, of course, but with enough planning, that 0 to 50 minute mark you might find where that's a solid environment that you're in.
Well, I think that's a way for an instructor to tackle the learning objectives. And let me back up. So because I think where sometimes we miss the boat or miss the mark, so to speak, is and this is a whole nother discussion. So I don't want to lead us into a rabbit hole together. But I think there's a lot of instructors that think the only way to teach the learning objectives is that they actually have to display them on the screen, read them
Mm,
in the classroom, but we're preloading the class discussion with a worksheet. And if you think that they're learning the material simply because you're clicking a slide and displaying it, that's just not happening. So we need to take, because we're going to teach the learning objectives, we're just going to do it in a different way. We're going to do it in a way that works.
right.
And every bit of information is getting covered because they've read it, they've answered questions about it long before they come into the classroom. So that allows for the instructor to be innovative and use some of these things to help the student hang on to it or gain some depth of understanding. It's not class filler by any stretch. You're going to have to put effort into it as an instructor to sort of plan it out. And you have to be squishy with your time,
Yeah.
especially when you first start doing it, because you're going to come into these classes and you plan for it to fit within a 50-minute window, and maybe 2 hours later, you're like, well, that took a little longer than I thought. But hey, if it worked,
Yeah.
then it worked, and I think that's the bigger the bigger goal here. But
Yeah. Well, so yeah, I think you're right, and that model right there, yeah, just be careful. You don't have to run every 50-minute block that way, especially if you're as an instructor are expected to explain nuance or if there's some kind of differentiation you need to do or whatever, safety briefing even. But you're not trespassing on a little bit of time if you take 20 or 30 minutes rather to explain something, especially if you're using a model where enforcement or reinforcement rather is at the helm. That's why you're doing these things, and that's why you want to. That's why instructors are subject matter experts. There's still explanation that's required. And so with that, so am I trespassing on time? How are we doing on that?
I think it's our longest episode to date.
Okay.
But
Well, I was going to ask if you wanted to wrap it up with a little bit of brain science, or do you think we let people tap out?
I think it's a tap out day.
Yeah.
I
Fair enough.
mean, I want to think that you set the stage for them to take on your call to action
Yeah.
and just try it on for size. See how it works.
This episode is pretty heavy in some brain science already. It's gonna introduce more of, well, at least my proposal. I mean, we may have a really cool guest, and without being too cryptic, this time it'll be Malcolm Jackson. Looks like we're honing in on an actual day to get him in. But yeah, I wanted to put some more brain science and sort of make an episode that starts to explain it. So maybe we'll just leave the rest of it, especially the idea of a 90-minute ultradian rhythm. I wanted to bring that up and talk about it later. So yeah, bottom line, call to action: do it. Add these concepts, buy the book, and don't be afraid to chunk your information because it's yeah, it's not the way we've taught before or planned before. But do you want your student or your professional to give max effort in class and be able to retain it afterwards? I think you're going to have to use another way or a better way.
Good deal.
Yeah, absolutely. So
It's been a fun conversation.
yeah, thank you for bearing with me on my multiple tracks I've laid down and my full page of notes. I appreciate that. And
uh,
just another shout out to my uncle Bud, who gave me 10-minute trainer, and thank you for allowing me to bring it to you and use it. It's been a great resource among many that we're going to bring in. And um, if you're a student or if you're a teacher, we're going to keep saying this over and over again, but we want to hear from you. Leave those comments. We encourage it. Info at PoliceTrainingHQ is our email. If you have our
.com.
cells, whatever.
It's a
Yeah,
.com too.
yeah, .com. I forgot about it. Info at policetraininghq.com. Our website, policetraininghq.com. You can get a hold of us many ways. We've got a catalog of classes from our update episodes. Those are live to I think they're all live, right? Even with the new updates for new supervisor and basic instructor.
Uh, so there's links to the basic and advanced instructor in
Yeah,
Weatherford. We're are locking down some upcoming dates for. I think based on our conversation today, we're going to do some of the new supervisor, some
hmm
crime scene. Um, I think an investigators class. And I know you do a really dynamic FTO class too. So those are hopefully we'll have those up and live once we confirm with our hosts that they're good with those dates. But we'll push those out and probably start maybe announcing some of those within our
yeah,
podcast so people can if you got some interest in spending some time with us in the classroom, um, we'll get those dates out and those topics as quickly as we can.
that's right. And I hope I'm not being overly indulgent by saying that we aren't afraid to talk about adding new host locations either. So if you're outside of the Metroplex, give us a ring. Be happy to partner with them as well. And I want to announce our Know It, Say It, Justify It class as well. It's a style of class that gets into some fundamentals, but in a way that makes it more methodical and has some methodology to it to help your career. So, Mike, I'm going to tap out. I'll end the suffering depending on how you see it. But I want to thank you all, thank everybody, and thank you for allowing me to go off on these tangents. Until next time, train smart.
Take care, everybody.